So, the flower essence varieties that we're going to cover in today's session and then right through to the end are the Australian bush flower essences. I've written New South Wales there because Ian White, the creator of Australian bush flowers, is from New South Wales, but he actually collects his essences all around Australia. The living essences, which are from Western Australia, the Grail Haven essences, which are from Queensland at Mount Tamborine, and the Spirit of Woman essences from Queensland in Mount Nebo. Now, previously there have also been Australite essences, which were Queensland based. They're no longer available. They were, you may find some of their books still in our library. They're harder to come by because they're not republished, but they wrote things like the Handbook of Australian Flower Essences, Spiritual Healing and Australian Flower Essences, and the Healing Essences of Australian Flowers. And you may find that it is of interest for you if you are wanting to start up making your own essences and playing around with these things. It may be useful because they do have, I think it's about 200 Australian flowers in the range that they went through, so it's kind of well worth having a read if you're interested. And I kind of dot some of them throughout these presentations if they have the same, they've used the same plant as one of the other essence sets. So we're just going to go through. There's also rose essences, which are from New South Wales in Sydney, but because roses aren't unique to Australia, we haven't used them, but they're certainly made up in the New South Wales area, and they're an Australian flower essence set. So the first, we're just going to go through them alphabetically. So the first essence set are the Australian bush flower essences. They are relatively well known, not just in Australia but around the world. They were created by Ian White in the 80s. Quite a few of them were created in the 90s, and Ian wrote his first book, Australian Bush Flower Essences, in 91. He created 69 flower essences originally, and we're going to study some of them here today. There's a very useful, the book itself is very useful as a practitioner, and Ian then diversified and moved into other forms of essences like the white light essence range and environmental essences like Antarctic essence, for example. This is Ian's belief of the philosophy really of the Australian bush flower essences. He believes that the effects are similar to that of meditation, to enable the person to access the wisdom of their higher self. And I talked a little bit about that in the last couple of sessions when describing the Bach flower remedies and the wisdom concepts that can come from taking flower essences. Remember taking them out of that whirlpool and kind of being able to observe from a more centered place and then learn in that way. And that's the ideas behind meditation itself for the most part. There are techniques, and there's so many different types. So the idea is that it's a technique in order to kind of not be buffeted by the storm, to be able to sit in amongst the chaos, in amongst the whirlpool, in amongst the storm, but not be externally affected, being able to continually find your center and come back to the center, come back to a grounded space. It helps with the day-to-day humanness of life. So this accessing of wisdom helps to release negative beliefs held in the subconscious mind and allows positive virtues of the higher self like love, joy, faith and courage to flood their being. When this happens, balance is restored. So what you notice in Ian's books is he talks about the negative aspects of the mind, so what the mind is kind of being caught up in, And then the positive attributes of the flower and how it helps to bring about balance, and that's how his books are written. So you'll see that going through. These are some of the books that he has written. The first one there are the majority of the essences. The second one is the rest of the essences that make up the essence kit that you are welcome to buy as a student of Endeavour at a discounted rate. They detail the use of numerology and astrology, kinesiology, iridology when choosing essences. So it's just some ways that Ian has found works for him in clinic. And then with the dosage, because we are going to learn about these essences and you may like to play with them or prescribe them in clinic, it's 7 drops from the stock bottle into the dosage bottle. So if you remember for the beach flower remedies it was 2 drops. Australian bushflower essences work on the number 7. The next bit mixed with a quarter brandy and 3/4 spring water. Again, the brandy is a preservative method. It can be 1/3 brandy to 2/3 spring water. It just depends on how much of a preservative action you'll require. 7 drops on rising and retiring. And the reason that Ian suggested rising and retiring had a lot to do with the ability to kind of move through the conscious mind and affect the subconscious mind more effectively. Because of the naturally more relaxed, receptive state that people move into just as they wake up and just as they go to sleep. And we did talk a little bit about when you create ritual or kind of a healing space around taking essences, and it's that ritual, not that everybody loves that word, just insert whatever word works for you if it doesn't work. These kind of rituals can be really effective healing tools in their own right, and having kind of a set time in the day can really help to frame somebody's day, and in doing so they can become naturally reflective on, well, how am I feeling today? What's going on? Am I feeling centered and relaxed, or is something big happening and I'm quite stressed and thrown off? Do the flower essences make a difference in that moment? And that helps with bringing back that self-responsibility that we talked about. Ian generally suggests 2 weeks to take the flower essences and then reevaluate as a practitioner. For Ian, he believes that remedies are best taken singularly to have a really strong and definite effect, or choosing combination. He believes when you combine more than 2, you're addressing separate issues and it may have a slower effect. So the energy of the flower is kind of diverted throughout different aspects of the mind or the physical body or the spirit, so it may just take a little bit longer. In crisis situations, remedies can be combined. Ian generally suggests a maximum of 4 essences, but if you look at the combination blends, oftentimes there are numerous essences within them, certainly more than 4. So it's kind of up to your clinical judgment as to how many you prescribe. But it's something to keep in mind. The less perhaps will have a finer effect, a more specific effect. But play around with it and see what your experience is. The next are the living essences from Western Australia. So in 1977, Vasudeva and Kadambi started to create these essences. They've been working with them ever since. They've been developing their own forms of flower essence counselling, their own unique forms of diagnosis and treatment. So Bakhui is basically you use the cards and you you're looking for people's reaction to the pictures of the flowers with the cards, and you go through an entire process with that. And this is all detailed in the front of their textbook. If you're interested, we have those books in the library, so go have a read and play around. Then once your 10 essences have been selected, you lay someone down on a table and place the stock bottle on the top of their head and get them to talk through their problem. And what often happens, at least in my experience with using this method, is that the conversation starts to change from the problem into recognizing the problem. And in some cases it even turns into the solution that the flower is bringing. You don't at any point tell them what the flower is for, you just kind of let them talk so that they're not influenced. But it's a really unique process, which is a very different way of prescribing. They also use acupressure and marmer point application, so they use the ear, acupressure on the ear, for example. And they're using native Western Australian plants. The living essences, something else that's unique about them is they don't pick the flowers like we said with the sun method or the boiling method. They choose to leave the flowers on the plant and simply take the bowl to the flower itself so it can sit there. The idea is that the plant itself is the story that the person's attached to. It's the mind pattern that's kind of holding them in that holding pattern, not enabling them to move forward, not enabling them to seek balance. And the flower is like the evolution of the plant. It is the part that holds the greatest wisdom. So they keep the two together so that you understand the lesson and then understand the wisdom concept. They're used in drug rehab centres, they're used in hospitals. I did refer to a research paper on that, nursing homes and Aboriginal communities. They wrote 2 books. The first one there is the 88 essences. So as a therapist, if you're choosing to use the essence kit, they actually have a great deal more than 88 flowers, but that's the practitioner kit that you start with. The dosing is slightly different with living essences, and they've got lots of different ways to dose. They suggest that it's generally 1 drop under the tongue 6 times daily, or 6 drops twice daily. And that is kind of their stock standard idea around dosing, though it changes. How many drops you use from the stock bottle into the dosage bottle will depend on how the person is presenting. So their idea is, for the more physical aspects of flower essence healing, you need a greater number of drops from the stock bottle. So they give the example of acne as a physical representation of the emotional imbalance, and they would use 70 drops from the stock bottle into the dosage bottle, and then prescribe the once 6 times a day, or 6 drops twice daily. And then as it starts to become less in physical, you start to become less in the dosage, moving all the way through to the much more mind focused, or perhaps spirit focused, moving between 3 and 1 drop from the stock bottle. The next is Grailhaven essences. Grailhaven from Mount Tambourine. Geraldine de Wells was born in London. She is a known astrologer and yoga teacher, and she generally runs pilgrimages throughout sacred sites around the world yearly, and is also quite well known for the Grailhaven water, which is what the Australian bushflower essences use as their form of spring water. This gives you an idea of, this is taken from one of Jerry's books, and it talks about her ability to see as a seer, angels or devas. She also refers to flower essence devas. And this just gives you an overview of kind of who Jerry is and her philosophy, which is she herself doesn't make up the essences by herself. There's generally a group of people, and she believes that that's part of the new Aquarian age, this idea that there needs to be a group of people in order to enable healing at a much deeper level. So Jerry wrote 2 books. One is about her journey to Australia from the UK and her visions of seeing the essence devas and also finding sacred water, and a little bit of detail about what sacred water is. And then the Grailhaven essence flowers themselves. This one's different again in dosage. It's using the number 3 generally everywhere, and it's external use only. So you take 3 drops from the stock bottle to make up the dosage bottle, and then the patient takes 3 drops and places 1 on each wrist and 1 on the third eye, which is kind of in the center of your forehead, in between your eyebrows. You can also use it as a room spray or bath. And finally, the Spirit of Woman essences. This is by a woman called Annie Meredith, who lives at Mount Nebo and makes up the essences from Mount Nebo. As the name suggests, these essences are focused on what Annie refers to as the divine feminine, which is the energy of the feminine, or of the yin, of the aspect of self that is uniquely feminine. So they're not necessarily only for women, it's just the focus is on issues of imbalance or rejection of the feminine within. So Mount Nebo itself was an Aboriginal birthing place, so there is yin energy there, feminine energy there, and a lot of the essences deal with nurturing the feminine within, so principles like cooperation, flexibility, nurturing, support, intuition. And Annie believes that there is an incoming consciousness of the divine feminine, known as the shift of the ages. This is similar to the idea of the age of Aquarius. She's authored 2 books. The Essence of Woman is her journey as a therapist working predominantly with women in her clinic, and then Spirit of Woman is the essences themselves. The Spirit of Woman essences are 7 drops, so similar to the Australian bushflower essences, makes it a bit easier to remember. 7 drops from the stock bottle into the dosage bottle, again mix with your preservative, however much you would like, and then 7 drops under the tongue twice daily. And you could say I'm rising and retiring, but that's not necessary. You can also, of course, use them as room sprays and baths, and there are, within that essence range, room sprays made up. And similar to a lot of different essence ranges, acute dosing will change how much you suggest and when. We've talked about that in detail. Next we're going to move into the wattles for our first Australian plants.